What if there was a single moment that could explain Tears of the Kingdom and also help to solve one of its greatest mysteries? It's an image that all at once manages to feel so familiar, yet ironically is one you've probably never seen. An instant that both symbolically and literally acts to connect everything from the storyline to the themes, symbolism, characters, even the very title and logo, all there in one moment. The glorious simplistic duality mirrored from one act to another, embraced in a trinity of motion uniting the spirit of Tears of the Kingdom across time and space. Artistically integral, symbolic, vital, memorable. Today's video is a theory about connections, and there's a lot we need to talk about. Be sure to hang around to the end for a surprising reveal that relates to one of the greatest mysteries Tears of the Kingdom has to offer. I'm presenting a picture here worth 1,000 words, reaching out to us across the hands of time. The Legend of Zelda is filled with iconic imagery and scenes that manage to capture the very essence of adventure, both of Legend's past and present, stirring a sense of wonder and even nostalgia that reaches out to us at a different level. On rare occasions, a single moment can capture something truly special, telling us a story without words. A great example is a picture of Link scaling the mountain with Hyrule in the background. It captures the revolutionary gameplay and freedom that's now synonymous with Breath of the Wild. Another legendary scene comes from Ocarina of Time. It's where Link and Zelda meet back up in the castle courtyard before fading to the final credits. In this scene, the hero of time returned to the moment where it all began, in his meeting with Zelda, a moment that set off a chain reaction that would echo throughout the series for years to come. It's so iconic, but particularly in how it brought that journey full circle. No doubt a theme players would know all too well from their time in Tears of the Kingdom. Here it's a journey with a narrative told throughout a complex tapestry of memories and interactions, made all the more intriguing when we consider the time-travelling aspects that underpin the game throughout, from questlines to environmental storytelling. And whilst it can be viewed from many different ways, it's tricky to pinpoint the various aspects at play in a way that serves to answer the greater questions that many have about the story and events and how they fit within the larger Zelda universe. Boiling that down into a singularity is difficult, but here is one that I think might fit that bill. It's a familiar scene in the sense that you've experienced it when you play the game. Maybe why you haven't seen it will actually come down to the nature of how it's presented. You see, it's actually comprising two separate events. It's a duality of scenes uniting Link, Zelda, and the Master Sword connected across space and time. Canny viewers might have picked up an Easter egg I left in my last video about this exact scene. It was designed as a callback for today's theory, referencing the cycle that Hyrule undergoes in changes from one adventure to another, a trope Nintendo utilise often. Whether it be the quest in Skyward Sword surrounding Hylia's plan to defeat Demise, or following on from that ending, Demise's subsequent curse to return forever in a cycle of undying hatred and malice. It even permeates the storyline of Ocarina and is central to the gameplay mechanics behind Majora's Mask, where here the 3-day cycle begs the influence of iterations on the ultimate fate of Termina and its inhabitants. Zelda games often present time travel loops, and the imagery playing out during this scene is no different, albeit more subtle in its presentation, as it occurs in two separate cutscenes that tell the same story, albeit from two different perspectives and across two different periods of time. And whilst we as the players become aware of the connection as we play the game, the importance of the moment and why it represents so much more is really hidden in plain sight. Uncovering the connection of these moments provides us with a far deeper appreciation of the overall significance, and how it helps to answer a greater mystery that, for me anyway, has remained unsolved until now. Of the two distinct cutscenes, the first occurs upon completion of the tutorial or Sky Islands at the beginning of the game, and it signifies advancement of the wider storyline, narrative, and mechanics. Upon completion of the Temple of Time, the large doors open by way of the Hylia statue. Link is beckoned forward towards a platform. Here, he approaches a golden light. It's one that emits a familiar chime fans of the series might recognise as iconic, to fire from Skyward Sword. Symbolically, no words are spoken. Link approaches the golden light, and in response to the pulsing energy, presents the decayed Master Sword into the glowing orb. It's then we see it activate an emotion, similar to the recall power gained by Link earlier when he opened the Temple of Time, power that was bestowed by Zelda herself. Here the sword is swallowed in the power before it disappears entirely, only to be met by Zelda in the ancient past. And as she embraces the sword, we bear witness to a magnificent sight as the light dragon breaches the sky barrier that separates the Sky Islands from the waiting Hyrule below. It's then that the players, and indeed Link, hear Zelda call out to them, "With Link, you must find me," ushering in the adventure in full as players take to the skies to seek out Zelda, the Master Sword, and ultimately defeat the true threat behind the calamity of Breath of the Wild, that of Ganondorf himself. The second cutscene is ironically a mirror version of the same moment played out from the perspective of Zelda, and it's represented not as a current event. Here it's a memory that you earn in-game. It's connected to one of the tiers that are aligned to the large Nazca-esque glyphs now that cover Hyrule's terrain. The memory represents Zelda in the past, following her meeting with King Raoh and Queen Sonia, aware of the gulf of time separating her and the threat now befalling her kingdom. And as she ponders how she might return, let alone aid in defeating Ganondorf, whose powers seem overwhelming in absolution of the castle, malice and destruction of the Master Sword, she soon hears a familiar call. As she's standing in front of moving cogs symbolically showing aspects of the sun and moon, Zelda hears that chime, the same that called to Link in the first cutscene. Once again, we see the embodiment of the glowing light of what we can surmise to be fire, the spirit of the Master Sword, and part of Hyrule's dual-planned approach to defeating the King of Evil facing Hyrule and Skald's sword, that of the Demon King Demise. So similar to Link, Zelda moves silently towards the light, and in a moment that mirrors that of the reaction of Link, she instinctively reaches out to the glowing orb, only to this time receive the decayed Master Sword. Travelling from present-day Link to the ancient past where it finds Zelda, it's a moment that's steeped in the series' lore. The Master Sword itself has been referenced as almost being akin to a ship that can sail through time, and here in Tears of the Kingdom we witness fire acting to unite Link and Zelda in a single space, traversing the massive gulf of time between them via a golden power similar to that of Recall, arguably referencing the powers of the Triforce, more specifically the powers to influence time imbued in fire by her creator Hylia. Not dissimilar from the powers blessed into the Golden Harp, for example, or indeed that of the Ocarina or even the Gates of Time. With appreciation to the other story elements that are uncovered in other memories or tears players learn throughout their adventure, Zelda begins to understand that her powers provide her the opportunity to fulfill a greater destiny. But once again, it would involve her sacrificing herself to the sands of time, allowing her light energy in this instance to power the restoration of the Master Sword, the key to defeating Ganondorf once and for all. Zelda makes a courageous decision in that moment. It's one that is as heartbreaking as much as it is visceral, as she chooses to swallow the very tear comprising her light energy and transforming in a process of draconification. She sees Zelda know she will lose herself forever, gaining the blessed curse of immortality to become the Light Dragon, the very same creature who so magnificently breached the sky barrier in the first cutscene with Link, bringing together these two moments both physically and symbolically. We understand now the sacrifice Zelda has made to save her people, and to give us, the player, the power we need to defeat Ganondorf come the final battle. The moment connects Link, Zelda, the Master Sword, and ultimately, the events both past and present that underpin the storyline of Tears of the Kingdom. And both end with the same iconic line uttered by Zelda as she gazes skyward. "Link, you must find me." What I found so amazing about this moment, besides the obvious, was how the overlaid imagery was symbolic to the last. Zelda embracing the Master Sword to her chest in the past is met with the Light Dragon breaching the sky barrier in the present. It's like cause and effect, the cycle of one action determining the other. Even her final call to Link comes later in Link's cutscene, acting to symbolise the echo of her call over the expanse of time, delayed from the first utterance in the past to the playing hearing it in the present. Her plea echoes throughout the ages, before it reaches her chosen night. This is the moment where Link and Zelda connect, their hands rising to meet each other across the ages, with the Master Sword traversing the seas of time, triggering Zelda's sacrifice in the past, the rupturing fissure of the sky barrier by Zelda as the light dragon in the present day. Moreover, the cycle of the dragon as it comes full circle, and the metaphorical and symbolic act of rebirth, something iconically connecting to the title and logo of the game. Now in this unfamiliar Hyrule, reeling from an upheaval event caused by Ganondorf, this moment is key to establishing the very power required to restore the balance through his defeat by the very sword he so nearly destroyed in his own revival. Another instance that in and of itself is an act of rebirth that leads to his end. It explains the events both past and present, connecting key players and themes, and indeed everything that seems to be iconic to the ancient events within Zelda lore. It references times of Hyrule's founding, the imprisoning war, and the betrayal of Ganondorf against the very kingdom he had sworn his allegiance to. It refers to his lust for power, once again sowing the seeds of calamities now synonymous with the myths and legends of the past, the history of Hyrule spanning the various incarnations of Zelda and its chronology. But I've only scratched the surface in terms of the hidden depths captured in this one image. Indeed, as good art invokes feelings on multiple levels, so too does this moment act to establish connections that run far deeper than we might realise at first. The centerpiece of the moment in question is the Master Sword acting to fulfill its destiny as the sword to seal the darkness. In the final battle with Ganondorf, many suspected awaited following the lackluster final encounter from Breath of the Wild with Calamity Ganon. The significance here was signalled by Nintendo in the lead up to Tears of the Kingdom's launch. It began with an asset that was posted on Twitter of a broken Master Sword surrounded by Zonai-esque runic patterns. And this was followed weeks later with a short video recalling the history of the Master Sword across past titles. It invited players to remember their personal connection with the legendary blade-using heroes past in their quest to defeat the evil plaguing Hyrule of that particular era. It's cunning marketing that acted to foreshadow the role the sword would play here in Tears of the Kingdom. Symbolically, it helped players connect their own memories of the past with current events they would experience soon when the game launched. And here in this moment, as we see, the sword traverses time, connecting Link and Zelda, acting as the binding force between the Alpha and Omega, the beginning, end and rebirth of a cycle destined to restore balance and rectify the upheaval now causing the very sky to fall, like tears on the kingdom below. Residing within the Master Sword itself and pivotal to appreciating the scene and its significance is the glowing light that called across time, in what I can only describe to be a splendour of manifest destiny. Fire beckons Link and Zelda with her memorable chime awakening something within them both, that of the chosen knight and the bloodline of the goddess, before fulfilling her long-awakened promise she made so very long ago, to continue to serve the light as the keeper of the Master Sword incarnate. The glowing orb of her spirit and the power she activates mimics the recall ability that's shared by Zelda and Queen Sonia, and indeed Link once bestowed in the game. But as it shifts the sword from a time lost to mere legend and myth, Fi's actions demonstrate powers more similar to the Triforce itself in that they almost seem to bend reality as they bridge space and time on a scale so epic it's hard to imagine. So significant is her role to the story in this moment that aspects of Fi's theme dance elegantly throughout the soundtrack of the game, an act to underpin the score in specific moments. One standout example I can refer to is when it's heard after conquering the Spirit Temple, and Link finally is able to complete his connection with the powers of the sages. It's here Link achieves his role destined as that of the Hidden Eighth, embodiment of the sage powers channeled to one. This fate was prophesied by the 7 heroine statues, and that of the Hidden Eighth, one of the many mysteries that featured in Breath of the Wild. And on a personal note, it was one I covered in a theory on the 7 heroines back in 2022. Again, I could be off base, but my translation suggested a masculine orientation when it came to dialogue or text about the 8th hero. The 7 sages or heroes each had a unique power that formed part of a greater whole. Now, should that 8th heroine or hero be someone who combined their power with that of the sages as it suggests in the quest, it might be referring to the ancient hero. Similar to what we saw when the Hero of Time joined forces with the 7 sages, an ocarina of time to seal Ganon upon his defeat. Having this moment fulfilled and establishing that prediction as more than just a theory was very deeply emotional on a personal level, and having Fire's theme underpinning it only heightened the significance and nostalgia that event would carry.
Statue of the 8th Heroine! This one was a real bugbear for me. Not bugbear, it was real... I doubted myself so much. Yeah, I'm with you, Dan. Ooh, it's got me. Whew.
In preparing this theory, another aspect of Fire's significance was also being explored by two friends of mine, OGF Gaming and Dan the Man, both of whom were actually looking at this, preparing theories of their own, and they'll be linked in the description of this video. It's here the story gets more interesting. You see, looking into Fire from their perspectives, they were both making connections of their own. Specifically, how Fire could be considered an in-game reference to a concept dating back to ancient Greece, that of phi or phi spelled phi, and the concept of the golden ratio. I won't dwell on the details or complexities, but put simply, the golden ratio is a mathematical concept often referred to as a connection with the divine, in how it helps to explain the mysteries of the world in terms of mathematical principles. It's better explained as a graphical representation of sequential numbers that expand to create a spiral-like pattern that loops back over itself as it extends and adds on itself, both exponentially and infinitely. As we talked, I shared something I was looking at on my end, this particular theory, and how I was looking at the particular moment in question, which for all intents and purposes was the best input I could provide them to help substantiate the connection they were making in respect to Fire and her role in Tears of the Kingdom, and how the golden ratio could be something that we would consider as important to what we're seeing. Both Oph and Dan instantly recognised the alignment of this moment to that concept, and it would be Dan who confirmed our suspicions almost immediately when he shared this overlay. Setting it back, with the golden ratio overlaid with respect to each moment coming together in a convergence of sorts, it was a visual harmony of artistry and mathematical elegance, and it said more than words ever really could. The picture came back with Dan's comment aptly saying, "You're right," and the picture is worth 1,000 words. I have to provide you credit here to both OGF and Dan the Man, long-term friends and active members of the Discord Forge, for helping to emphasise the core of my theory and how the golden ratio acts to perfectly surmise the concepts I try to share with you now. When we connect these and overlay them, we get the perfect representation of how the two concepts of time connect into one cycle, akin to the tears or the Ouroboros and the yin and the yang or the Magatama, the overall cycle being iterated here on Tears of the Kingdom. And even the numbers could provide further meaning. Considering Link and Zelda to represent the beginning and the end, the Alpha and Omega, we could look at them to represent the two number ones, the other numbers extending out and iterating as being 2, 3, 5 and 8. If the story of Tears of the Kingdom begins and ends with Link and Zelda, the Alpha and Omega, representing the ones, it would leave the representation of the other numbers to a total of 18, an exact match to the number of memories we uncover in game. You could go further with each respective number hiding even more clues or Easter egg references if you like. The 2 represents light and darkness, the beginning and the end. The 3, for example, could reference the 3 layers of the map, the sky, the surface and the depths. Perhaps it could even be said to represent the virtues of the Triforce, or indeed the springs, that being of wisdom, power and courage. The number 5 could refer to the 5 sages that are found in game, and outside of that it could refer to the 5 additional bargainer statues that can be found aside from the central one underground. And indeed the bargainer itself, being the dealer of souls, harkens to a similar force at play in Majora's Mask, often debated to be a game that really does iconically represent the 5 stages of grief. And the number 8, well, as I mentioned before, the significance there can't be underestimated in terms of the 7 sages and the hidden 8th, a concept that sits at the heart of the connection between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. But indeed the 8 could also be said to represent other aspects, nonetheless the distinct areas and regions that are mapped across Hyrule. You could expand further on this, and I'd love to hear what connections you can make with the golden ratio in the comments. Can you see an alignment of numbers of sorts or the mathematical principles at play? But to bring this section to a close, I'd highly recommend checking out both Dan the Man and OGF Gaming, their channels and their respective theories on this topic particularly, and how their theories almost symbolically present the connections discussed today, but from a different perspective. Probably one of the greatest pieces of validation for this theory I'm presenting actually comes courtesy of Nintendo themselves though, specifically the development team in an interview about Ask the Devs, where they're providing extra context around the development process. One section in particular covers the moment perfectly, and alludes to the special reveal waiting at the end of this video. When pushed further in section 2 about Link looking a little different, Eiji Aonuma references Link's arm, and how hands are a major theme of the title. It's expanded on further by Hidemaru Fujibayashi, who says, quote, "Titles in the Legend of Zelda series intertwine all the elements of gameplay, mechanics and story and combine them all into a single game. For this title we chose hands as the key theme to bring them all together. For example, abilities that Link uses to solve puzzles are all released from his hand and arm. We even included this symbolically in the game's mechanics, such as having scenes that use hands when opening special doors. This hands theme also crops up here and there as a key element as the story develops." It's an interesting observation, one to keep in the back of the mind. The comments reflect not only Link's new abilities, but also significance in other aspects such as the story, and none come to mind more closely than that of Zelda falling in the beginning of the game and Link reaching out desperately clutching to try and catch her, achingly falling short as his malice-ridden hand grasps desperately at the air between them, right before Zelda blips back to the ancient past. Recalling that miss in the finale, players urgently control Link, who once again reaches out to catch Zelda as they fall, this time executing the save that no doubt haunted Link and players alike for the journey of the game. As their hands connect and come together, it signals the restoration of balance, with the rectification of the moment that we lost in the beginning.
It's time. Hold her this time. Don't miss.
With this cycle and the events and phenomena of the upheaval brought to a resolution that can only be called a satisfying ending for anyone playing the game. It's one that brought literal tears to so many fans around the world. And it shows that their connection, that between Link and Zelda, these people who are so important to us and iconic to the franchise, is one that surpasses borders and boundaries. In this moment, with Link and Zelda reaching out to each other, we see them connected via the Master Sword, and it's as captivating as the bonds they share together. It's a beautiful moment that's so easily missed, yet so rewarding to those who are able to put the pieces together. It feels a fitting visual that Nintendo have left for us if we're willing to dig a little deeper. And for me personally, this moment really did tell the story of the journey we had undergone, not only in Tears of the Kingdom, but also Breath of the Wild as well. You see, symbolically those two games are connected, in story, events and artifacts, and again, acting to mirror this cycle. From the Master Sword to fire reflecting in a golden power, and moreover connections of a golden ratio, and finally iterations of connections and themes echoed by the development team as core to the game across multiple levels. We've collectively covered a raft of layers that truly add depth to the moment that Dan coined as representing 1,000 words. It perfectly aligns the story and events, and indeed the cycle prevalent to the very heart of the game, the duality mirrored by events past and present, the yin and yang and the Magatama like tears connected in a single point in a common purpose, presented in the Ouroboros of the logo. In preparing the research on this theory, I continued to find more examples of the same type of connections, expressed in different ways through different symbols, callbacks, themes, and manifestations that honestly, I find hard to compile into the words that I'm sharing with you now. My appreciation for the artistry at play grew even deeper, and it reinforced the notion that if indeed Nintendo had set out to explore the themes of connections through hands, maybe this moment really indeed represented it perfectly. Telling the story 1,000 words couldn't with one moment. And even then, when I thought I'd captured more than enough evidence and examples to present this theory to you now with the effort and passion that I thought it deserved, one more discovery came to my attention. I got thinking about the duality of Link and Zelda, and the connections of the tears, and It reminded me of something else I've been building on with an existing theory, and was one covered in the Hand of Power. It was the sigil at the core of Tears of the Kingdom. One and the very same that Fujibayashi was referencing when he was discussing the importance of hands thematically to Tears of the Kingdom being weaved seamlessly into various aspects of the gameplay. Could the moment I'd been preparing have any alignment with that sigil? What if there was a single moment that could explain Tears of the Kingdom? It's time to put my theory to the test. We've covered so many layers to this moment, with each aspect acting out to fill a larger story, but I've kept this last one to the end. It's more intriguing than anything, I think. You see, I mentioned at the start of the video a reveal of an additional layer. When we add the sigil, this strange cohesion of symbolism that appears as an artifact associated with the game prior to release. You see, it first appeared on Nintendo's Japanese website for Tears of the Kingdom, featuring the same animation we see play out in game when Link activates it. Symbolism here is off the charts, and when I referred to it in the theory I presented live, and one that I released prior to Tears of the Kingdom's release, I was looking at it in terms of the alignment it had with another key asset, and it's one we've discussed here today as well. It's that one about the broken Master Sword presented by Nintendo on their Twitter account, that same one with the runic symbols surrounding its circular pattern. Again, here the symbolism was open to interpretation, but the alignment was exact. But trying to understand its meaning had perplexed many a Zelda fan, myself included. Clearly see an eye, and similar to that of the Sheikah at the top center, we see tears flowing, and that's symbolic to the crucial aspects of the storyline of the game. Either side though, there were these two designs kind of mirrored in a way, with half an eye each and an outline of a shape. A hand in the middle, well, that was strange, but we now know is activated with Link's hand, the one gifted by Hyrule following its impairment in the opening scenes. And the image itself is one that also seems to be featured sort of similar in a tattoo or styling on Queen Sonia. But in overlaying this in the moment we're discussing today, the meaning of the sigils seemed to become so much clearer. You see, the shapes seem to mirror each other, and indeed, either side of the eyes marry up with the forms of Link and Zelda. It acts to outline them and their connection with the Master Sword central to the eye and the tears. I mentioned before that I'd overlaid the Master Sword asset, and we referenced that as specifically the one that was broken at the time, the one presented by Nintendo prior to launch in Tears of the Kingdom. And the alignment of that image and the sigil was nothing short of exact. You can see by the runic symbols and the outer circles and how intricately the markings are, that this is no mere coincidence when it comes to alignment. So now understanding the broken Master Sword at play in this moment, connecting Link and Zelda, mirrored across time and connected via hands, with the hand at the center of the sigil and surrounded by the flowing tears we can confidently say represent Zelda's sacrifice, and indeed the tears of the sages and memories. Could be argued the symbolism is now explainable, that indeed the sigil itself could be a prophetic vision of this moment and how it would act within its own cycle, and indeed how the Master Sword and the hand would unite the beginning and the ending of the story, with Link and Zelda playing out that connection between the past and the present, including the gathering of the sages and the tears. It's a prediction of the connection between those people, those events, those moments, and how it would all encompass the need for the shrines to exist in the first place, and how they would be activated by this very sigil, because it speaks to the moment. And the role of the Temple of Time, the Sky Islands, the Depths and more, it all would seem to come back to this same series of events and cycle playing out. The sigil represents the self-contained nature of the cycle and those key elements, and when we consider how that has symbolically united all aspects of the story, the title, the logo, the characters and events up to now, it just goes to add more weight and depth to the game. Even beyond that, it also connects to the Imperial Regalia, something I've mentioned in theories past. The sword central here again, the tears representing the jewel of the Magatama, but Link and Zelda actively mirrored in a connection. Well, that was just the perfect example of the historical triad that permeates the Zelda series that I've been calling out in so many previous theories. Indeed, if the assumption of this alignment to the sigil and the moment was anywhere close to accurate, and I could argue it's always debatable, these matters always are, but I would suggest the implications go well beyond the symbolism of the moment. You see, one other call out feature within the sigil is the runic symbols that can be noted under the hand in the center of the flowing tears and also the figures mirrored on either side. Without context, these runes are almost impossible to decipher. But should this moment reflect the sigil, we would now have context for the runes, and alignment to what they might represent. One aligning to Zelda, one aligned to Link, the other with the tears and the Master Sword, dare it be said the virtues of the Triforce. The language and symbology behind the Zonar runes and symbols remains unanswered by and large, despite sterling efforts by so many in the community, many of which show significant promise and could actually be onto something. I can't help but wonder, when considering the overlay of the sigil and the context it would provide to these symbols, how that might help expand our understanding of the language core to the Zonar symbols and deciphering the coded language prevalent throughout the game and its world. It's part of another theory I have, but I wanted to touch on it here and now, for if nothing else, to present the concept for consideration should it aid in some way to the collective community efforts in deciphering the language. But to circle back to the moment in the theory, and the overlay of the sigil image and the connections being made, I'll round out by pointing out that the eye acting central to the flowing tears easily mimicked to me that of the Sheikah eye. And so for one last surprise, I decided to overlay another symbol I've been investigating as part of an ongoing theory arc or master theory of Zelda I've been building on for some time now. This one being the Sheikah eye symbol and one at the core of the Sheikah eye map theory. Now, I'll leave it up to you as to whether you consider the alignment to be anything more than coincidental, but at the very least, the eye itself is indeed a match with that of the Sheikah eye, with lashes and tears mirrored in sevens top and bottom, the same number of points arising from the Sheikah eye symbol, and arguably connected to the many aspects the number 7 plays as iconic within Zelda lore. Here it strikes a notable placement against this visage, but if we add in the sigil, the seemingly arbitrary points take on a new meaning when compared with both symbols, and the moment in question. If we add over again the golden ratio, the duality of the yin yang, and you might start to see why I find this moment so very fascinating. And maybe also where I'm heading with theories I've been connecting for a while now, and theories yet to come. Trust me, there's a lot more, and it gets a lot more interesting. I can't wait to share that with you, and that'll be a topic of future videos coming soon. But for the moment, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments and whether you consider these connections to be significant at all. Were you surprised by how much alignment there was to the themes and events of the game, or was there a moment in the video where the symbology really clicked for you? Did it speak to you on a different level, or make you think something different, or provide an appreciation you didn't expect? All of it's valid, and I'd love to know more. Maybe you've watched the video in its entirety and come away convinced that there's absolutely nothing here at all, chalking it up to a matter of convenience, or maybe I'm going through a process of apophenia. It's a tendency humans have for seeking patterns of random information. But either way, I'd hope in the least you found the exploration interesting and entertaining, and something reflecting a unique perspective that you haven't heard yet, with effort and passion worthy of your time and thoughts. The compilation of the evidence, research and work put into this theory, and others supporting it for me, are born from my love of Zelda as a fan of the series first and foremost. And theories are merely an interpretation of observations and facts we present for consideration, nothing more and nothing less. Ultimately, dear viewer, it's up to you who decide what it means for you. And in that way, I'll argue there is never any right or wrong, simply opinions supported by viewpoints. And how we interpret them is up to us. I wanted to end on that note because anyone contributing to the conversation, putting ideas in comments on theories just as much as anyone else, is a theorist. We're all equal in that sense as we put our ideas forward, whether it be in a comment section or on YouTube or across the many mediums and forums fans like us care to frequent. We are a community, and we share our passions. And I sincerely thank you for taking the time to hear mine. If you enjoyed the video at all, leaving a like does go a long way, and feel free to subscribe if you want to stay notified of new content as it comes to hand. Don't forget to check out the links to OGO from Dan the Man. A final shout out to everyone supporting the channel and have been over the past few years. It's been amazing. It's whether you're watching videos, whether you're liking, commenting, chatting in the streams or hanging out in Discord, I have to say, I'm really humbled to share this experience with you all. It's such a diverse and positive community and I'm really thankful. Until next time, please be good to yourselves and to each other. Keep being amazing. See you next time here on GameSmiths. Come on, girl.
Oh,
And
stop.
gotcha. It's time. Hold her this time. Don't miss. Yeah, better.